So when we stopped the video a minute ago, I asked you to do number 3 and 4. Hopefully you had a chance to do that. Number 3 is a yes, it does form a right triangle because both sides are equal. Both sides is 625. Number 4 is a no because the left side is 296, the right is 324. They're not equal, which means it is not a right triangle. So any questions on this before I delete this and move on? Okay. The next set of problems uses the Pythagorean theorem to find the unknown. And in this case, we have a side that is unknown, which is the hypotenuse. So for these kinds of problems, we're going to use the Pythagorean theorem to find that unknown. So we're always going to go through these same steps. There's 2 different kinds of problems. The first one, let's label everything. You should know where to put the A, the B, and the C. So I'm going to label 8 as A, 7 as B, and remember C is always directly across from that 90-degree angle. In this case, we're looking for the length of the hypotenuse. We're going to start by writing the Pythagorean theorem. Always write it first so that you don't make a mistake when you substitute. My next step is to substitute, just like I did with the last problems. A is 8, B is 7, C I don't know, so I'm going to leave that as X. Just like I did with the last problems, my next step is to get rid of those exponents. Very similar. So 8 squared is 64, 7 squared is 49, and I'm bringing down my equals, I'm bringing down my x squared. Just like when we solved equations, it's important that you keep track of your work and you stay organized. My next step is to add these 2 things together. Remember, my goal is to solve for x. We want to know what x is. So in order to get to that point, we have to simplify on this side. So what's 64 plus 49? What does that give me? 113.
Yeah.
How about the same? That's wrong.
So again, I added, I got 113. I brought my equal sign down. I brought down my x squared. Now here's where you have not had much experience. X squared and square rooting are opposites. Let me explain what I mean by that. Look over here. So when we solved equations, if I took a number, let's say I took 5, and I added 1 to it, I get 6. If I take 6 and subtract 1, what do I get? 5. What I want you to see is when I add 1 and I subtract 1, it takes me back to where I started. They're opposites. That's what we learned when we solved equations. What happens when you multiply by 2 and then divide by 2? They're opposites and they cancel each other out. That's why I want you to understand that when I square and square root, they are opposites. Let me show you an example. So when I take 3 and I square it, what do I get?
9.
If I take 9 and I square root it, what do I get?
3.
3. It takes me back to what I started with. Squaring and square rooting are opposites. So when I'm solving an equation, my goal is to get x by itself. I need to get rid of that square, that 2. And the way you get rid of that square is square rooting. So I'm going to square root on the right to get x by itself, to make that 2 go away. Whatever I do on one side, I have to do the exact same thing on the other side to keep my equation balanced. So you guys already know doing the opposite operation to solve an equation. You know that idea. You also know to do the same thing on both sides when you're solving. That's not new. What is new is squaring and square rooting are opposites. Okay? So on the left-hand side, plug that into Desmos for me and round to the 10th place. So the square root of 113, what are you getting? What do you get?
10.6.
Yep. So the square root of 113 is 10.6. I'm bringing down my equals, and again, understand that this 2 and that square root symbol cancel each other out, so I only have x left. So I solved that equation and figured out what that length was. You should always double check. When I look at my figure here, if this is 7 and this is 8, is it reasonable to get an answer for this side to be 10.6? I think so. If I got something like, I don't know, -4 or like 5,000, I think those would be red flags and tell me I did something wrong. So always do a real quick check to see if it makes sense. So 10.6 is the length of that one unknown side. Do number 6 for me. Same kind of problem, very similar setup, go through the exact same steps for number 6.